Let's talk about unit efficiency with some Wargaming Tactica. And the idea behind this vlog is to look at these fundamentals, Wargaming tactics fundamentals, the rules, the principles of dice and mechanics that no matter what your system is, Battletech, X-Wing Miniatures, Warhammer 40,000, Chain of Command, these rules are always in effect. They're very high level. So if we can identify them, if we can understand them, then we can layer them over the rules of the game that we're playing and try to find some Tactica advantage, then pushing that advantage based on the units and the type of models that you select on the table. So jumping in with this idea of unit efficiency, I need to remove models off the table. I need to remove your models. There's two things happening in every war game. There's a mission where I'm trying to accomplish something, capture some objectives, grab something on the table, recon a point, control table quarters, break through to the other side of the table. Sometimes that mission is also aligns with just destroy your opponent, destroy everything on the table. But then at the same time, I am trying to remove your models off the table because that prevents you from doing the mission. And those models could be infantry, tanks, starships, starfighters, monstrous creatures, skirmish type based game. I'm trying to remove your models because then you can't complete the mission parameters and you can't remove my models trying to complete the mission parameters. So there's this idea in removing models where I need to have volume of dice. And I explored volume of dice and pushed that up to the Wargaming Tactics playlist here on my channel. But I want to framework it a little bit for those of you who are new to Wargaming or new to this series of vlogs. If I want to remove a model off the table, well, first I have to take a bunch of dice and shoot at it. Let's look at like a sci-fi or a historical Chain of Command. I have to shoot at you. Now, the number of dice that I roll depends on the weapon profiles. A machine gun might roll 8 dice. A rifle might roll 1. I see what models in the unit. Let's say I have 10 infantry. I see what units are there, what has range, what can see. I take those dice. These are the dice that I'm going to shoot with. I then need something to hit, often what we'll see based on range or conditions or modifiers or the type of unit shooting. Is it a green unit? Is it a veteran unit? Is it a regular unit? Is it an elite unit? I'm going to need something to hit on the D6, or if it's a D10. Let's just say it's D6s. So I've got my dice, and let's say it's an elite unit. So I hit on 3s or higher. So with that perspective, I roll out these dice, and a certain number hit. So I take the misses off. So if I'm rolling 10 or 15 dice, I guess all 10 or 15 could hit. I've never seen that probability, but anything could happen. A certain amount are going to hit. I take those dice, and now I roll them to see if I damage you, if I wound you, if I cause casualties. You might have some sort of save, cover, or armor. But the idea is the dice that I'm shooting with are based on the size of my unit. Now, at some point as I take losses in that unit, I've got this infantry unit, got a machine gun. As I take losses, the dice that I can generate become less and less and less. So maybe it's 9 dice for the rifles and 8 dice for the machine gun. Putting those together, as I take losses, it's less and less and less. At some point, I'm going to take so many losses with the unit, assuming it's not wiped out. If I start with a unit of 10 models and I'm down to 2 or 3, I just don't really have the volume of dice to reliably cause any damage. So now if I have 3 rifles left in that unit of 10, just as kind of a generic example, I've got 3 D6. I'm rolling 3 6-sided dice. If I need 3s to hit, even rolling legendary, 2 are going to hit. Maybe 1 or none causes a wound and causes you to remove a model. So at this point, based on the size of the unit, based on the game mechanics of the weapon, when your unit gets down to minimum efficiency, where now it can't reliably remove models in significant number to prevent you from winning the mission or for me to complete the mission, what do? That's the framework. That's where we have this set up. Well, the first thing to do is, can you kind of mob up? Can you combine units? Now, I know in most war games you can't combine units, but if units are next to each other within the same range of each other, they can shoot at the same target. They generate a similar volume of dice. So if I have 2 infantry units behind a wall next to each other, they take some losses and one is reduced down to 8 and the other is reduced down to 2. Those can still shoot at 1 unit and still have some volume of dice. As opposed to if I just have 1 unit behind the wall, it takes hits, I'm down to 2 or 3 infantry, I have nothing else to support that dice. So sometimes you want to keep units together, or if 1 unit takes significant losses, then maneuver it and get it closer to another type of unit, kind of mob up, pull them together. The second aspect, if you can't do that for a variety of reasons, is a unit that is up on the table, still around, still alive, still powered up, still functioning, is something that your opponent has to deal with. If I'm down to 3 infantry and I can't reliably hurt you, other than if I get extremely lucky and therefore I roll 1 die and then you wipe me out, where can I hide? Can I just move behind a building and hang out there? By hanging out there, my opponent is going to have to contend with those models. They're going to have to deal with those models. Maybe they'll pull something off to attack and try and wipe it out. At this point, you go full defensive. Make that unit as hard as possible to kill. Run away, hide, find some place to be, do the best you can not to get it wiped out and not to take those losses. This becomes important as you move from mid-game to end-game. So now we're going to sidebar into this for a moment for framework. At the beginning of the game, your army is the strongest it's going to be. Armada, ships, whatever it's going to be, starfighters. As the game continues, you take losses and your opponent takes losses. It becomes less and less and less and less. By the end of the game, unless it's a total just annihilation, usually as we go into the end game, you and your opponent are pretty beat up. You don't have much stuff left. So at that point, as we go through the beginning of the game to the mid game, if 1 or 2 units take losses and I can hide with them and prevent them from getting wiped out. Now when we're in the end game and you maybe have 1 or 2 units with 2 or 3 infantry each, but if I have 4 or 5 with 2 or 3 infantry each, suddenly the volume of dice is equal again and I'm back in the game. So what you see is units that are not wiped out, that take losses mid-game and are not effective anymore, by the end of the game, they can become a lot more effective. So those are some of the tactica to keep in mind. And again, based on the type of system, based on the units in there, based on all that, as you take losses, you will know at what point that now, okay, sitting here and firing, it's not going to gain me much. I'm better to hide. I'm better to try and get defensive. I'm better to try and get my opponent to chase after me with that unit and hold out till the end game when there can be one final surge.